Hey, Cardinal fans, we're in for a special edition of This Week in Ball State Sports. It's the summertime. There's a lot happening, including the NCAA versus House Sentiment. We're the Director of Athletics, Jeff Mitchell, to talk about all of that and much more. But, Jeff, before we get to that side of things, special announcement came out recently. Head coach Bill Richards of Ball State men's tennis, 53 years, he has called it a career.
Yeah, what a remarkable career for Coach Richards. I am so grateful to him, not only for his leadership of our men's tennis program for the past 5 decades plus, but for the resident historian that he is, at least in my opinion. After joining Ball State a little over 2 years ago, I can always count on Coach Richards to give me the history of how things have been, who has come before me, and different decisions that have been made. And so the good news is Coach Richards is still going to be around, and so I can still lean on that resident historian component of the multiple hats that he wears. But he leaves a tremendous legacy at our institution, and it's not just for athletics. I think he's made a pretty indelible mark on Ball State as an institution, certainly within the Muncie and East Central Indiana communities, but he is just a treasure in many respects, and he's got generations of students that have played for him, grown under him, developed as young men, and many of whom are now looking at perhaps retirement in their own right. so it spans the generations literally, and I'm just beyond happy for Bill and Sue, his wife.
Yes,
for deciding to make the announcement to retire. But he, even to this day, still has the energy to do it. I just think it's in his mind and in Sue's mind, I think it's time for him to retire. So I think he's at peace with it. And again, he went out on his own terms, and I think that's the way he wanted to. And I know he had teased me about he probably should have left many years ago and still had the energy for it. And I was like, Coach, if you got the energy for it, let's roll. And so it's been such a blessing for me to work alongside him, and just to see the reverence with which the alumni base looks at him, and the current student athlete population, the way they play and compete for him, and that will continue as we transition, and we'll certainly talk about that in the coming days ahead.
You mentioned generations have been impacted by Coach Richards. That was on full display the last couple of days through social media. You could see different generations of people commenting, replying, sharing content that had to do with Coach Richards' retirement. I think the one thing that really stands out is just how many different people across the world that Coach Richards has impacted.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of the line of work that we're in, and particularly as a coach. And you don't truly know how the seeds that you plant on a daily basis blossom, and sometimes they don't blossom immediately. And I think that's part of the joy of it, is that those seeds do plant, and eventually they do blossom, and you learn about the transformative impact that you might have as a coach on a young student athlete, and then you hear those stories, and they're impactful, and you realize that you've impacted them. And so for Coach Richards, he just has countless blossoming seeds that are going to come out in the next few days, right, as the stories are told. And we'll certainly have a gathering in the fall for the alumni to come and celebrate him. And so we're working on the details of that. And that's, of course, when you'll get a lot of those stories. And I'm just incredibly happy for him and grateful for Coach Richards, and 38 MAC championships.
It's a lot of championships.
It's a lot of championships, and so just really pleased for him, and what a treasure.
And you mentioned it, the university-wide too recognized him several years ago with the President's Medal of Distinction. We are just super grateful and super happy for Bill Richards. Happy retirement, Bill, and we'll definitely look forward to the alumni event that Jeff had mentioned with Bill. You mentioned the word impact, Jeff. There's a lot of that being thrown around right now. The NCAA versus House. Some settlements have come out. We've figured out a little bit more of what the details are. We'll get to some fan questions as well throughout the course of this podcast of what people are looking forward to and how it impacts Ball State. But Jeff, as you have been able to see all of this unfold, what is your initial takeaway about the overarching impact of this settlement for NCAA athletics?
Yeah, so I think the key takeaway is this is a fundamental change in how we view intercollegiate athletics going forward. It's a pivotal change. It's an evolution, and if we go back in time, I'll channel my inner Bill Richards here.
I love it.
With a resident historian here. If we go back in time and we look at the advent of the NCAA, we have over 100 years of evolution from 1906 when the NCAA was founded, because there was concerns about the flying wedge in football, and student athletes were dying because of injuries sustained in playing the game of football. And so an organization developed, and it became known as the NCAA. Since that time until now, we've had numerous periods of change and evolution. The acceleration of that, though, in the last decade plus has been pretty remarkable. And now we're looking at a change where student athletes are just going to enjoy additional benefits and more freedom than they received in prior decades. And we began to see that over the last several years as the advent of the transfer portal came on board, as they were able to earn more money for academic purposes. And now it's shifted again to where there's even more freedom of movement. Not that it's a great thing from perspectives of coaches and administrators, university officials, but when you're dealing with antitrust issues, we are susceptible to lawsuits, and sometimes that's how change evolves is through that type of activity. Right. So here we are now, and what I'll underscore is that it's going to look differently through the lens of administrators and coaches a little bit. But I don't know how much of a sea change it's going to look like to our fans and our community, because the basic principle of providing an opportunity to engage in competition, to engage in the development of student athletes through sport, is going to look and feel similar. There is more money in the system, and that's been evolving over the last 20 to 30 years. But how we go about coaching student athletes, educating student athletes, is going to look and feel the same, in my opinion. But some of the mechanics around what that looks like are going to shift, and that's for coaches and administrators to adapt and adjust to what those rules are. And Mick, I know you'll have other questions about this, but that is one component of this change too, is that there's a new governance system in place. And it's complementary to the NCAA. There's still an enforcement system that the NCAA will oversee, but you've got the introduction of the College Sports Commission that is going to be the prevailing governance body for a lot of the elements that come out of the House settlement. So from roster management to the provision of additional benefits, is pretty unique in this continued evolution of what college athletics looks like, certainly over the next decade.
You mentioned provision of benefits to athletes. What does that mean?
Yeah. So what the settlement has effectively done is provided at the Division I level the opportunity for institutions to provide up to $20.5 million in additional revenue in directed payments to student athletes. That is up to individual schools to make very specific decisions around what that looks like. But it can come in the form of more scholarships to more student athletes. There's a roster cap now on the number of student athletes that can participate on any given roster. And there are no more, or there is no more, the concept of scholarship limits. It's related, your scholarship limits is really related to the number of people on your roster. So in other words, if you have 25 softball players, you can award 25 scholarships, whereas the cap used to be, I believe, 12
Right.
for
Yep.
softball. And you could divide those 12 scholarships up however you wanted to, but there was no limit on the number of student athletes that could compete on the roster. Now there is, and that scholarship cap increases. Again, that's an institutional decision as to how much of that additional aid that the institution can afford to provide. And as an extension, there are also additional benefits in the form of directed payments that some student athletes may receive. So you can have student athletes on a full scholarship or not on a full scholarship elect to receive a certain amount of money paid directly to them.
By the university.
By the university. And that is in addition to anything externally in the name, image, and likeness space, where student athletes enter into contracts with third parties that are compensating the student athletes for their name, image, and likeness, which is very similar to what's happening on the institutional side. Is the student athlete enters into an agreement with the institution for that same type of name, image, and likeness agreement. The mechanics are a little different, and the cap for the Ball States of the world is also $20.5 million. Now, to be very frank and clear, we're going to come nowhere close to that, right? Our budget is substantially different at the Group of Five level than it is at the Power Four level, which, a lot of the formulas that led to the delineation of this $20.5 million was as a result of the resources and how it's counted at that Power Four level, because those Power Four, Power Five conferences were defendants in the lawsuit along with the NCAA. So they've driven a lot of how this settlement impacts the entirety of Division I, and we're certainly a part of that, and we're paying our part too as part of the settlement, where we are having a withholding of funds from the league office to help pay for the other component of the lawsuit, which is the back pay portion for former student athletes that played sometime between 2016 and 2023.
So there's a difference between pay directly from the university to the NIL system. Those are two separate entities.
Correct.
Okay. And there's the NIL Go, right? There's
That's part of the governance system.
Yes.
So student athletes who receive or who enter into an agreement in a third-party type of situation, those agreements must be vetted through this NIL Go system, through the College Sports Commission, to help establish a market so that we understand what the market is in this new name, image, and likeness space. Remember, Mick, that for the last several years, we've had a really skewed market because we haven't truly understood, A, what the market is, B, how to value name, image, and likeness per a specific individual, per a specific institution. You've got location issues, you've got sport issues, you've got revenue generation, and it all got twisted in terms of how student athletes were valued in that regard. This should help that. Will we see a difference right out of the gate? I don't know. Will we see a more firm market set over the course of the next few years? I would think so. And it just all plays together, and we're going to continue to adjust. I do think I recently, Mick, was in Orlando, Florida at a meeting of FBS athletics directors from across the country. So there are 134 directors of athletics at FBS institutions, and there were about 90 present at this meeting.
It's a lot.
And approximately 75% of the sitting ADs, and there was a level of comfort in that room that we think we at least have a framework of rules by which to play that will allow us to make some better decisions on our own campus about how to navigate these next few years in intercollegiate athletics. And we see in this current time, as we look at football, for example, we'll just talk about them since we've got a new coach with Coach Urimovich. There's no shortage of interest of student athletes wanting to look at playing at Ball State. We've got 54 new players that are coming in this fall, and the recruiting is going so well for football right now. I get text messages from Coach U daily, so excited about the student athletes that are being committed to our program. So here we are in this new age, and we are continuing to operate at Ball State in a manner consistent with, we know who Ball State is. We know the type of student that it attracts. We know how we can develop, and we project to put student athletes in a position to be successful, whether they graduate from here or in the event that they move on to something else. It's important that we continue to provide that quality Ball State experience where whether we have a student for 4 years or for 4 months in a season. And I would rather them be here for 4 years,
right.
But the world has shifted. But as this settlement begins to take hold, and we have a lot of learning to do still, and we are also making adjustments within the resources that are entrusted to us, and we will always be good stewards of those resources. That is a core tenet of how I lead this department. So we're going to make good decisions about that, but we also have to be nimble enough to adjust to the new world.
Right.
And so we're going to do all that we can to stay competitive in that front. Our Chief Operating Officer, Lauren Rhodes, and I must model what things look like on a daily basis. And we just got running spreadsheets and tabs. I mean, you were almost like, which spreadsheet are we looking at today?
Right. Excel is getting its use from you guys.
And that's great. I mean, we are collaborating more with our coaches around what that looks like, and there is a fun element to it, but we are going to also continue to keep education at the core of what we do, and we don't want to lose sight of that. And I don't think that the settlement necessarily erodes that. I think it's incumbent upon leaders of various institutions to ensure that we continue to keep education as a focal point, and we're certainly committed to that at Ball State.
So you mentioned being committed to that. You mentioned each school that has opted into this, $20.5 million as a cap to spend from a direct payment to athletes. You've mentioned in the past that Ball State's not cutting sports. How, overall, with all of that put together, how confident are you from the standpoint of Ball State not changing how it operates at all, and to be able to survive? I guess survive's a strong word, but to be able to navigate through this, these changes, because there's the talk of programs being cut from other universities and things like that. But with all of what you just said, how confident are you that Ball State is going to be able to maintain this new path?
Well, I think that I'm confident to the extent that we are confident as an institution about where we are right now. And my job, is to constantly evaluate our programs, constantly evaluate how we operate. And that's all predicated on the facts that we have at our disposal. So could things change in the next few years? Well, sure. And we're in a time of disruption, and disruption is not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
It's just right now it's a period of evolution. So as we know things today, we are continuing to put forth a united front of 19 intercollegiate athletics teams, representative of approximately 450 student athletes. And that fires me up that we get to go and wear Ball State gear and develop these young women and men to be great citizens in our communities and to help them win a few ball games and MAC championships along the way. So that will continue to be what we do. And that's controllable for us, right? Some of these things swirling out there, sometimes it's informative, sometimes it's not. And we have to be able to discern what's relevant, what's not, and how it can be impactful to us one way or the other. I want to point out when you mentioned that $20.5 million and that the status of opting in and opting out. So the Power 4 or Power 5 institutions, I'm sure I've thoroughly confused us by using those interchangeably. But
It sounds like Power 5, right, is coming back because I think the Pac-12 is.
But the Pac-12 is going to be considered. You're going to start hearing Power 4 with the ACC, SEC, Big 12, and Big 10.
Okay.
And then the group of 6.
Okay.
Inclusive of the rebranded Pac-12.
Okay.
And as soon as I say that, it'll be called something different.
Be Power 5, Power 6, whatever.
So, but the defendant conferences, the former Pac-12, and then the SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, those conferences and the members that comprise those conferences automatically are opted in to having to abide by the settlement. For everybody else, there are 22 other conferences, inclusive of the current group of 5 and the institutions that do not sponsor FBS level football, have the choice to opt in or opt out. Stated more appropriately, the member institutions in those 22 conferences have a decision as an institution whether to opt in or opt out. And Ball State has decided to opt in, as has every other institution in the Mid-American Conference. Some institutions across the country at various levels have decided not to opt in. And that's okay. That's a decision that institutions get to make, and they should have the ability to make those institutions relative to the best interests of the institution. So, but that doesn't mean that we are sharing at that cap. It's just a cap. Even at the Power 4 level, those institutions may not necessarily share at that cap. Okay, so that's kind of where we are today, and we're eagerly awaiting for our fall seasons to start.
So we could talk about them.
Right.
That's a lot of ground that we just covered, and your background in law helps discern all of this. Is there anything that we've missed that you think is pertinent for Ball State fans to know about the settlement or how this impacts Ball State University and our athletics programs before we get to fan questions?
I think for now, that's a pretty good summary of where we are. And we've been tracking on this for months. You know, we can.
Right. We've been waiting to have this episode for a while.
we can go back to these podcasts and talk about, that we were planning for it, eagerly awaiting a decision. And we're here now, and we've got a plan. And there are a lot of people across our campus that have been immensely helpful as we prepare for this new era. And it's a credit to President Mearns. It's a credit to Office of General Counsel, to our budget and finance and broader administration office. And Ball State is tremendous when it comes to collaboration. It was one of the things that attracted me to this place. And it has not disappointed in certainly in this period of disruption, which is, in my opinion, when you need the most collaboration. And I feel great that we have that every day on this campus. And so I'm confident about the direction that we're headed.
You ready for some fan questions?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. From Sideline Sports, we have the first question. Does Title IX apply to the new settlements? And if we pay 50% to men in a hypothetical situation, do we have to pay 50% to women as well?
Yeah. So, tremendous question. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of conversations that we're having on campus about what that looks like. And I don't have a definitive answer for you today about what it does look like. What we're committed to is doing things consistent with what the law requires. And, there's confusion right now about what the settlement mandates and just some changes in our nation's government and how that works with the Office of Civil Rights. And so it's a very complex set of facts, a very complex set of expectations. And I've been through some of these things before in my career, and it's not as black and white as it can be. So we certainly are looking at things with an eye consistent to how we operate right now. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be other influences that dictate how we act going forward. So I'm not sure that I have any real information to share on that particular question because it's pretty new in terms of how we're going to proceed going forward.
Perfect. Another one from Sidelines. Will Ball State be paying all athletes a set number, or what's an approximate number or percentage, or will teams have a set number to divvy out as they see fit?
Yeah, we are continuing to evaluate what that looks like, and that is just as we continue to take all of our sources of revenue and divide those sources of revenue amongst our operating entities, which is inclusive of financial aid and additional benefits. So I can't tell you precisely, nor can we say that because a lot of that is protected information. But there will be the emphasis on being great stewards of the resources entrusted to us and how we operate our department on any given day across our support units, across our programs, and as that impacts financial aid and additional benefits.
Last one from Kyle Babcock. He is curious about, is there a concern that the group of five, possibly group of six, just become feeders for the Power Fours at a consistent level, even more so with these changes to college athletics? Or have what we've seen in the last couple of years been the path that situation could go on, where athletes have a good season and they transfer, quote unquote, up?
I do believe that you're going to continue to see student athletes that perform well at our level have the opportunity to test the waters in that quote-unquote higher level, that Power Four level. I think it's important for everyone to understand, though, that we benefit as much from the transfer portal as we may be hurt by it. In other words, if student athletes are leaving to go to perceived better opportunities, we also have the ability to go attract student athletes to come in because of the opportunities that this place affords them. And it can be student athletes that are coming from that Power Four level, or student athletes that are achieving great at another level, maybe even the Division II, Division III ranks, that show immense talent and just have waited on somebody to give them a shot. And maybe it's schools like Ball State that do that. So I do think with the reduced roster spots across many sports, that the competition for talent is probably going to increase a little bit with limitations on how many can be at that Power Four level, providing opportunities therefore for the group of five. And it may very well impact college athletics in a positive way from a talent quotient standpoint at the FCS level from a football standpoint, and even Division II, Division III. I think that it remains to be seen what that looks like. And I do think that what gives me the most heartburn about not necessarily the settlement, but about how intercollegiate athletics has changed a little bit over the years as it relates to the transfer portal, is that we have too many, in my opinion, too many student athletes that are leaving a place where they're receiving an education and they're having that education paid for to some extent, that are in their decision to try to find something different, are not finding a place to land, and so therefore are losing out on the opportunity to get an education and to play a sport that they enjoy, and that's a real tragedy to me. So I think the message to any student athletes that are listening is, just because the transfer portal exists, just because intercollegiate athletics is changing, doesn't mean that the grass is greener somewhere else. And I think some student athletes, and whether it's here at Ball State or elsewhere, are beginning to see that and are saying, look, I've got a great opportunity ahead of me to develop not only as a person, as an athlete, as a scholar, but also I can have a forever place to call home when I graduate and have a network of people that are going to care about me. And I think we have to continue to emphasize that. And if there's a place that does that really well, it's Ball State. And I continue to be amazed at just the affinity for this place that our alumni have. And so I think we have to continue to reinforce that to our student athletes that, hey, you got a great place right here. Will people still come and go? No question about it. And again, we understand that that's a part of it, but I like what we're doing.
A lot's changing, but there's a lot of, I think, interesting points within what you said, and a lot of good things that are happening, because what you said about athletes realizing that they are in a good spot is a huge positive to it. There's also money to be made, of course, in other athletes' perspectives. I think one thing that's always a sense of calm within the change is that what you said of there's always people that want to play at the level of Ball State. There's always people that want to come here and perform, regardless of what sport it is, regardless of anything else. You have people that want to be here. And I think that rings pretty true with everybody. You said 54 new football players. In the changing dynamics of college athletics, if you have 54 new players that want to be on your roster, I think it speaks volumes to where the health of the university is. And you mentioned it, the university's putting the back to this situation, right? They opted in for a reason.
Right.
And so I think we have to remember that and not lose sight that everybody's connected here. And from what you just said, with the 90-plus athletics directors in that meeting in Orlando, there's seems to be a consensus that within all of this disruption, there's a plan moving forward that works for the majority, if not all.
Yeah, and I think the commitment is we got to play by the rules, and we've got to adjust and adapt to this new world that takes effect on July 1st.
That's true. We didn't even talk about that. It's July 1st.
Correct.
Yeah. And the NIL Go, I think, was immediate, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So that governance structure is being built as it's begun. So the analogy of building the airplane while we're flying it, that's what's happening right now with that governance system that's called College Sports Commission. July 1st hits. It's the brand new academic athletics year for 25-26, and we enter into this new era of intercollegiate athletics. And just as much as AI is disrupting business and higher education, we're entering into a new world there, and so we're equipped to make adjustments. That's something that comes natural, I think, to the world of intercollegiate athletics. I still hear Jim Page, my head baseball coach at Millsaps College, yelling at me, Mitchell, make an adjustment. So, that was a lesson that I took away from playing college baseball, and I continue to make adjustments every day, and grateful for Coach Page for instilling that in me. But just as a leadership principle, we need to continue to be nimble as we make adjustments, and in our case, as we advance the interests of Ball State.
Those lights flickering might have been our cue to finish the podcast. We were done anyway, but that was funny timing. Jeff, appreciate your time as always on This Week in Ball State Sports. Thanks for hanging out with us over the summer, and we're excited to see what July 1st and beyond brings. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. Go Cards.
We're in the Betsy M. Ross SportsLink studios. Thank you to SportsLink. Thank you to Betsy M. Ross for her generosity for the studio space as well. This has been a presentation of This Week in Ball State Sports. Thank you for your fan questions, and the new age of college athletics is here.